Welcome to the Self-Control Show, a podcast for men. If you get defensive, shut down, or find yourself going 0 to 100, you're in the right place. Most men were never taught how to regulate their emotions. And this show is about changing that. It's not therapy, and it's not fluff. It's training. I'm your host, Jason Schnitzer. Let's get to work. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. And got another great one for you today. And as the title said, we're going to talk about keeping your word. And really, if your word means nothing, then really nothing else matters, right? This isn't about productivity, getting it right. This is about the core root driver for us as humans that's deeply rooted in our nervous system, right? And it's about safety, right? If you can trust and rely on somebody, that connection feels safe, right? And that is the foundation of really every relationship, right? Whether it's business or in home, and especially ones that involve intimacy, right? Because if your wife can't trust your word, she's definitely not going to feel safe enough to open her heart or her body to you, right? So, I mean, you tell me, but what's the number one indicator of a really grounded, regulated man, right? A lot of times people look at, how successful they are, how a person is, how a guy is, their income, their confidence, how they work a room, how calm are they under pressure? And really, it's none of those. And it actually boils down to something even more simple, right? And again, it's right in the title of this episode, and it's, do you do what you say you're going to do, right? When your word really means something to someone, you become predictable, right? And when you are predictable, you're trustworthy. And when you're trustworthy, you're safe, right? And when you're safe, intimacy can grow, especially with your wife, but also in business, right? Everybody knows this, right? If you can't trust somebody, generally speaking, you're not going to take your business back to that person because, you get burned. And it's like, well, I'm going to go find somebody else, right? And why this is so important, especially in relationship, is because your predictability becomes what feels safe for them, right? Their nervous system gets to relax around your consistency, right? When you're inconsistent, you don't follow through. What happens, whether you know it or not, is that registers as a subtle threat, right? Depending on the severity of the break in trust or the breach in trust, right? And for your wife, she doesn't really care about what you say. She wants to see it. I'm sure you guys have heard it. It's like, hey, show me, right? Your words match your actions. And when that happens, that's when her system relaxes, right? That's when she stops bracing. That's when she stops tensing and she starts trusting, right? And this is not an emotional thing. It's a psychological black and white thing, right? And the question that her system's asking all the time really is like, is this guy steady, right? Am I steady? Is he steady, right? And what can happen? Because like sometimes you're really trustworthy at work, but then it kind of crumbles at home, right? Or we tend to break the trust of the people that are closest to us sometimes and think, they'll forgive me. But the pattern is, and I've talked about this on a previous podcast, is the overpromise kind of loop, right? There's a hard moment. There's these big feelings. Maybe your wife gets upset, right? You feel criticized, maybe like you failed or you did it again. You're not good enough, right? And the tension just starts to build, right? And what happens is, if we're not aware of it, what we default to is like, how can I fix this, right? And we say things like, I'll change, I'll do better, I'll handle it. Where in that moment, you really mean that thing, right? You really mean that you're going to get to it. You're going to, finish the project, or you're going to go do the thing, and you're going to shift and you're going to change. But you make those agreements in a state of your nervous system that's more of a fight or flight state because you didn't regulate first. And when you do that, subtly what's going on, probably, is you're really just doing what's called appeasing, right? And that's more of an adaptive survival response where basically you say the thing that you think that person wants to hear, as opposed to like slowing down and pausing and connecting with like what's actually true for you, right? And these are patterns that we develop when we're younger, right? And unfortunately, however they served us when we were younger, like especially if, getting in trouble, like your parents were like overly aggressive or disappointed or shaming, right? Or belittling, we can try to avoid failure, quote unquote, at all costs. But what happens when you say something that you mean in the moment, but like basically what happens is you say yes so much that your list gets so long that something's got to give, right? But when that something gives, trust breaks, right? And that slowly, sometimes quickly, but a lot of times slowly erodes the trust over time, right? And basically what's happened is you're choosing short-term peace over long-term distrust, right? And this isn't about like you failing or anything being wrong with you, right? It's about not being able to speak up and be true to yourself and speak up your truths in the moment, to your ability to tolerate tension in those moments, right? Not being able to say things like, hey, I'm kind of at my capacity right now for this, for that, for the thing, whether it be with your wife or friends, right? Coworkers, bosses, etc. And really being able to check in and maybe even ask for a little time to think about something. I can't commit to that thing right now. What's really difficult, and I'm sure you guys can relate, where, maybe you agree to something, for example, 2 weeks later, the thing comes up that you agreed to, and all of a sudden you're like, man, why did I agree to go to this birthday party when I really just don't have the capacity? I really just want to take a break, right? And, that overpromising is something that we want to notice and we want to change, right? And I'll never forget, you know, coming out of this, one of the best things I did was because I think we all have a version of this. I had a version of this where it was like there was a chapter of my life where I just said no to everything. That was kind of like my default response, right? Especially if you're prone to or know you have an ADHD or you're neurodivergent. Because a lot of times in that moment, in that excitement, it can actually seem like a good idea, right? This is the whole crux of the matter is like we really mean it in the moment when we say yes. But when we come back from that place that we were and we can kind of like be a little more regulated, we might not have the same feeling about the same thing, right? And instead, we need to learn how to slow down and stand firm and speak our truth, right? Because when you can keep your word to other people and to yourself, this is where you actually strengthen your nervous system, right? Because what happens when you can first of all, keep your word to yourself, you do the things that you say that you're going to do, which by the way, if you feel like you just don't respect yourself, you've got no self-respect, you've got low self-esteem, this is something that I work with guys with, and I've worked with myself, right, with over the course of years of keeping small promises to yourself, rebuilding that self-respect and that trust. And that's where true self-confidence comes from, right? It's like you trust that you say that you're going to do what you're going to do, right? And that eventually gets reflected back by the other people in your life, right? When you can do that over time, not only do you become more confident, right? You can say the hard thing, you can say how you really feel, right? Less worried about what other people think, right? Your wife actually relaxes, right? Because women are smart as shit, right? They can tell when you're just telling them the thing that they want to hear, right? And when that's a pattern, that is probably the least attractive thing ever to a woman because it is so unsafe, right? And it's, some people call that nice guy syndrome. Like we just say the thing, right? Because we're trying to go with the flow or be safe, or what we think is being safe is going with the flow and not creating more conflict, right? We're just trying to not rock the boat, etc. That's actually not what she wants to hear. She wants to hear your truth. And when you say something, she wants to be able to trust, like, oh, okay, yeah, I know that Jason is going to do that thing because that's what he does. He does the thing that he says he's going to do, right? And that is how you show your wife and your kids that consistency, right? And this is when you become super dangerous in the right way, let's just say, right? You're calm, you're steady, and most importantly, you're reliable, right? And you learn that you don't need to overpromise to be valuable, right? And this is like at the core of, I think, what we'll call masculine integrity and being a man is, it's like you can just like take everything else. And if there's one thing that I would want you to take away from all this, right, as a starting point that will serve you forever, right, is can you be a man of your word, right? Doing the things that you say you're going to do. Because when you just start there, you keep it simple, that builds on itself, right? And anybody that's been successful in business or in a relationship, this is like at the very core, right? So the question you ask is like, can I keep my word? Do I keep my word? Right? Because if you can't, really nothing else matters. It doesn't matter about your intent. It doesn't matter about your effort. It doesn't matter what happened or your explanations. This is where real safety starts relationally, especially with your wife. This is where healing starts between the two of you, right? Lots of water under the bridge. Well, this is where it starts, right? This is where integrity starts. And if this is hard for you to hear, right, this isn't shame. This isn't me shaming you, right? This is just the work that's looking at you back in the mirror, right? And this is what is at the core of what's possible for you when you really learn about your own states, about your nervous system, how to regulate your emotions. Really, the sky's the limit. When you get this right, it's the key that unlocks all the doors that you're hoping for. More intimacy, not being roommates anymore, living a life more aligned as the person and the man that you really want to be. And this is exactly what I help guys do. So again, if this is you, if you see yourself in this podcast, I would highly encourage you to reach out. That's why I'd offer a free call with me to dive deeper on kind of what's going on for you and to see if this might be helpful. As always, you can check the show notes for those details. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. And what's one thing this week that you can make a promise to yourself and follow through on and start rebuilding? All right, guys, that's a challenge, and we'll catch you next time.